Pods.
It's quite enough better.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know if the volume's better.
Yeah. No, I like to have my headphones because it just sort of locks me into the zone a little bit more.
So if you're patient, I'm going to try once more.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, you can do what you got to do. Yeah, so I guess whatever you're doing, I'm not, it takes away your sound though, so I'm not hearing you. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it'll help, but I could kind of walk you through it because I know Zoom pretty well by now. If you try, well, there's a couple of things. I guess you got to make sure the Bluetooth is connected, right? You got that?
I got
And
to
then,
the point I could hear you, but then you couldn't hear me anymore.
so if you click on, I don't know what kind of computer you have, but usually in the top left-hand corner, you can see like a Zoom.us thing. If you click on that, there's a drop down, and then you go down to preferences, and then in preferences, if you click on audio, you can check to see if the microphone is the same as the speaker. So it should say like earbuds or whatever your earbuds are called. You got that? And try talking.
Hi, 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 hi,
And
hi.
now I hear you. Yeah.
Okay, now it's working.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
good.
So it's all working, right?
Yeah, still good.
Okay,
Hmm.
so I can now turn it off. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Yeah.
How
Good
are
morning.
you? Yeah,
I'm pretty good. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel good. It's a long day. I've been staring at my screen a lot today, so I'm a little screen fatigue going on.
Where are you at the moment?
Currently, I'm in New Mexico. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Are you
I've
doing a
been,
retreat there or?
no, I took the past 6 months. I've been traveling a little bit. I was in Europe for a little while, and I got back to the US, about a month ago, and I'm kind of in the process of looking for a potential to relocate somewhere in the US
Mm.
from Oregon. And so New Mexico has been on my radar, and so I'm spending a few weeks here just to feel it out. Yeah,
Oh, exciting.
yeah, it's beautiful here. It's a really beautiful place. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a dry climate, so very different, but yeah, beautiful landscapes here. Hmm.
Hmm.
How are things going for you? You must be excited about your new direction.
Yeah, I mean, I'm I'm very curious always about what's happening in the collective. So
Yeah,
it's the individual, but also, and on Bali, somehow the energies are allowing me access to that more. So I just hold and then I move and I hold and I move and
yeah,
things will unfold. And,
yeah,
but I think the last 3 weeks, I was curious how your journey was or the men you're working with. I think the last 3 weeks were probably what I felt the most profound for, like, for the men in terms of we need to do something. That's the best words I can put on it. Yeah, I just saw this image, like the feminine. It can be inside us, or it can be the women. Whatever. It's like we're done. Can't do
mm,
this anymore. Sort your shit out. And I just saw more and more men like, okay, taking action.
yeah.
Uh, and yeah, there was something really profound. Did you have something like that in the last 3 weeks? Have you felt it?
I mean, I don't know if more so in the last 3 weeks than I've noted over the last, couple of years. I think, yeah, I think the momentum is continuing to pick up around this kind of new men's movement, and
Yeah.
just seeing a lot more men, I'm definitely got a lot more men coming to me.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
I was I just saw this image of our movie The Matrix, and how that like I just saw it like crashing out. There's a big part of it I truly believe in, but I was having the insight of the whole Matrix. There's this whole part, like the Oracle is the female, and then
mm,
she tells Trinity, you're going to go and save this man from the
right.
Matrix, and she will die for it. And so Neo's just waiting for her to come, kind of, and then she comes, and then he rises. And I just saw that crashing. Like, it's like there's no Trinity coming to save Neo,
Mm.
and Neo's going to find his own Trinity.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's powerful.
Right.
And I agree. I think it's part of that, part of the integration, that kind of Hyros Gamos effect, and I imagine for women, some women might have their own version of that. Though I think collectively, in some ways, women have already been engaging their masculine for many years, as
Mm-hmm.
part of a collective movement. Not necessarily in an integrated, healthy way either. I
Yeah.
think it's
Can
it's
you
kind
talk
of,
about that, where you think the unhealthy part have you seen?
well, I think what's what's been modeled as masculine energy for millennia now. I don't know how long, but many generations, is this sort of dominance model.
Mm-hmm.
This idea, it's like, I think it's hard to speak exactly to what is the like healthy integrated version of the masculine, because I think there's the whole yin yang. There's always some yin in the yang, and there's always some yang in the yin, and but I think that either it's so, I think we try to, in our culture, like, um, divide things into these like equal, proportionate, very abstract ideas of masculine and feminine. And I think when we do that, we lose the essence of truth and nature, which is never completely one way or the other,
Mm-hmm.
and so, I think, obviously we can look to these archetypal structures to, um, invoke certain energies in us so that we can embody. But I think, one without the other, it's like the masculine without some feminine is just like, a razor sword that's just going to cut through everything and
Mm-hmm.
be destructive in a way.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and so, to me, I guess it's there might be some energy of dominance and assertiveness, but if it's, um, I think a lot of it has to do with where is it being sourced from?
Yeah.
It's like, if the masculine is action, what's informing that action?
Yeah.
What's calling it forward? And I think what has it go out of balance and be destructive or hurtful is, um, unconsciousness, or our wounds, or our traumas, these parts of us that are still in the shadow. And I guess that's the lack of integration piece.
Yeah. So when I hear you, it's more like using the masculine with a healthy feminine, which I call the intuition or creator insight, whatever, to use that to move forward with the masculine.
Yeah, yeah. The way that I look at it, it's kind of funny because, there's a lot of teachers these days in the realm of polarity and sexual polarity, and there's this kind of emphasis on masculine leadership, and I think that's beautiful, right? And I think men or women can embody that. I don't think there's a right way
Yeah.
about it. Um, but I also, my take on it is, just like, say, using dance as an example, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like, if there's a lead and a follow, and to me, actually, the leader is actually the one that's following. Like a good leader is actually
Yeah.
following. They're
Mm.
actually, and what I mean by that is they're feeling, they're sensing, they're tuning in to the need, to what's present. So it requires that deeper awareness.
Mm.
So, we could call that the intuition, being connected to one's feminine. Yeah.
That's powerful. Wow.
Mhm.
I want to talk about a bit about the hero's journey. I had someone talk about the second hero's journey, and
Mm.
it. So I have this part here, and I mean, there's a lot of it I've personally also faced, but it's like the part we go, there's this call for adventure, whatever, and then you have possibly all these spiritual experiences, metaphysical, like out of this world experiences, and then you integrate all of that. And from what I've sensed, there's a point at which you're asked to come back, integrate it all, and offer it in service or in sharing. It doesn't have to be
Mhm.
on a big scale, but you're sharing it. So how important do you think that part is?
Um, which part, the sharing part or the
Yeah,
whole,
so I've
all
integrated, let's say
pieces? Yeah.
yeah, all pieces. We can go to all pieces. I mean, for me, it's like the end part. So your journey can be however you've fallen or how many gurus you followed or not followed, but there's a integrated end journey. And then it's like most people, like there's a part you come and you share from and integrate, not as a victim perspective, this happened to me, but literally having integrated, this is my story. And another teacher of mine says you've got to integrate all the shame. That's when
Mm.
you're complete. What do you
Yeah.
think about that? And then you can go and share from this most neutral, this sharing space.
Um, yeah. I mean, I would say that you know, in my own experience, it's a nonlinear journey, and I think culture wants to have us size it up in this like neat little package, right?
Mm.
And it's
Yes.
like, oh yeah, you follow the thing like they do in all the movies, right? And then you're there, and then like, happily ever after. um, but yeah, I don't think it's that straightforward, at least in my experience. Maybe for some people it is. It's, I think maybe in pieces, pieces come in that way, and there is, I think the stages in the hero's journey are like, you are confronted by something difficult,
Yeah.
facing some kind of difficulty. You feel your, some kind of, it could be a tragedy, it could be a loss, it could be just your being confronted with your own demons, so to speak. And um, you know, traditionally, right, like Joseph Campbell's take on it
Yeah.
is you set out on the journey, and eventually you find some kind of a teacher or a mentor that helps you um, integrate and helps you to I would say, the role of the teacher, um, it can be to offer guidance or mentoring, but I think what's needed now more than any time is somebody that has the capacity to hold hold somebody in places where they're unable to hold themselves, just to
Mm.
be with their darkness, so to
Mm.
speak, which are, I think, the most difficult places for men in particular to face and to be with, and it requires somebody that's seasoned in being with their own darkness to be able to hold that space and facilitate that. And I think it's probably accurate to say that, there's so many coaches and people kind of stepping out into this role these days. It's sort of like a new industry. And I wouldn't say that, probably most of those people aren't really seasoned in that. I don't
Mm.
think they've really had the proper mentoring because they're being cranked out through these kind of factory line systems of coaching. And I'm not saying like, coaching is always needing to include shadow work and that's what it's about. Maybe certain types of coaching, those coaches can facilitate one leg of the journey. But if we're talking about becoming integrated humans, it it is essential that we go into our shadows and learn to embrace these parts of ourselves so that we can be leaders. Otherwise, our leadership comes from, like I said, those places earlier where we're being driven by our wounds so much that we we can't even really see our impact on what we're doing or creating. And that's most of what's going on in the world.
But so when I hear you, I would also dare to agree to a certain part. There can be a danger in this factory coaching. Let's just churn out coaches out there to coach people. There is a danger in that. Or do you
Yeah,
think,
I
yes?
no, I agree. Yeah, I think it can be dangerous because it sort of falsely empowers people to be facilitating things that they don't really have the capacity to facilitate appropriately. And
Right.
and I think I'm very happy to see what a current trend in this industry focused around trauma,
Mm.
trauma integration and being
Yes.
trauma aware.
Right.
And that makes me happy. I think that's really essential to have that
Yes.
understanding.
Yes. Yeah, I have that also. But so that's where I was having these thoughts the other day. We have, like, in this coaching business, we also have these sentences. They're truths, but if they're not really looked at properly, they can be dangerous. Like, you create your reality. I think if you have a
Right.
coach who's continuously telling that, that can be so, I mean, I've had it in my life being told to me
Hmm.
for years, and it was detrimental. It was like, oh, I
Yeah.
create this and I'm so crap, and I had no other tools like to go to trauma work or something. And okay,
Yeah.
so if I get a bigger house or I can make some more money somehow means I've created better. And that was a truth, but it can become dangerous. So, like, you create your reality, or you are not your thoughts. I think that truth it can be dangerous because you are your thoughts, your words, your actions. It's just how you relate to it. I mean, we all have. So
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that perspective, and it makes sense to me. There's a lot of like, I'm on, doing a lot of work on social media, and people create these little memes, right? And how, these simple little statements, we can weaponize them against ourselves and use that to, um, I guess, further reinforce inadequacies and these kind of beliefs that we have about ourselves. And yeah, so I think it's easy for this industry to become toxic, and we need to really be conscious about how how we're wielding our words and our influence, and having some responsibility and accountability around that, because these are powerful concepts, and you know there's a truth in them, and there's often a larger truth that they're contained within, right? And if we're just kind of trying to take this micro truth and apply it, it may not be appropriate to the individual at that time in their journey.
yes.
Mm. Yeah.
When I studied Kabbalah for a while, there were some sentences that really helped me. Like, before, you can't always avoid the tragedy maybe, or the pain that's going to come to take you to the next level, possibly because you're in a comfort zone. But what I really like this, and I wanted to take your take, it's like you start to feel something that's not right. There's kind of judgment in the air. There's many green lights in your life that are kind of turning red. people around you start sharing their disapproval, or they're commenting on how you should change. Things are maybe just too good. You think I'm invincible, or you start complaining because you've actually got too much. And those were things that I could reflect on myself. What do you think of that? Did you have that on your journey when you're like, oh, I'm the best out there, and then suddenly something was like, well, maybe you're not?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, I think that's why my take on the hero's journey, even the archetype of the hero itself is kind of an
Yeah.
immature archetype.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so like we might need some of that energy of the hero, but and this is an archetype that's very revered in our modern culture, right? That hero archetype, and it it basically, it can inflate the ego in that way, and to a point where our identity kind of gets wrapped up in our successes, or all this stuff, and I think social media really amplifies that too. And in my experience, um, the the integrated hero's journey has a heavy dose of humility, kind of getting our asses kicked by life, because my understanding of existence is like it's beyond us. Like, we didn't come here to fully figure it out, right? And as soon as we think we do, boom, it's one of those ass kicking moments. Um, that's been in my experience, and I don't trust people. I don't trust coaches in this industry that speak in platitudes like, I've got this figured, I've got this dialed, this is my system, this is my program, like, this is going to get you from here to here. Um, yeah,
Guaranteed success.
yeah, right. It's never that straightforward, and
Yeah.
I think it's that same arrogance that, I mean, has driven our world to the place that it is. People think they have it figured out, right? I mean, even this whole sort of argument about COVID and vaccinations, and I mean, I actually think it's a really powerful time, because it's actually forcing, maybe not everybody arrives here, but I think it's really pushing us to be in that uncertain place. Like, yeah, I don't really know, like, all the evidence. Wait, there's all this evidence over here and all this evidence over here. I mean, some people, staunchly stand on their side of the debate and defend it, pretty intensely. I'm trying to take a middle path with all of it personally, and yeah, I think it is dangerous when we stop questioning ourselves and the information that's being dished out.
So she has the first one. What usually hinders a man from having a committed relationship, even when they have found, men, even when they have found the right partner? Is it something to do with financial independence, or whether they feel they aren't good enough for the woman, like intimidated? Those are her two things, but maybe there's more. So what I guess she's asking is, what hinders a man from committing to a relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a simple answer to that, and I think um, she might be accurate for some men. The idea, I think what a man needs at a certain phase in his life is, and you know, we might look at this as the sort of the archetype of the prince, and moving from prince into king, right? And the stage of journey of the prince is kind of about like building your empire, and feeling like a sense of like self-actualization, you know, like, um, and so I think for certain men, the, there can be a healthy level of sovereignty around like, yeah, I want to get this part of my life handled before I'm fully available to make a deeper commitment. And I think that comes from a pretty intelligent place of knowing that knowing the demands of relationship, right? Relationship requires a certain amount of attention and energy and investment in order for it to be good and successful and enjoyable. And and I think if a man is sort of in that empire building stage of his journey, he knows that a relationship is going to um, take away a certain amount of time and energy from building the empire. So he's probably going to be reluctant to commit. It doesn't mean he shouldn't, or that a woman shouldn't try to be in relationship with a man at that stage.
Hmm.
But I think it's important for women to understand like that's probably where he's at. He's really looking at his investments of time and energy and how he can really offer his full heart to a relationship. Of course, I think there's other reasons. But I just wanted to speak to what I think she was bringing up there.
Yeah, like a
Yeah,
healthy answer. I mean, the other ones, I guess we all know, but this is a nice take on it that has more like
yeah,
understanding and compassion towards someone. Um,
hmm,
yeah, I like that one.
yeah,
So the
hmm,
next question she also had, she said, when it's an intimate question, but she said, when you have sex with a woman you're interested in having a relationship with, not just a casual hookup, how is the
hmm.
sex? Is sex just sex for that man almost, well, or is it almost like an outer body experience because there's so many emotions towards this woman? And does it scare the guy? And it might be a reason why he might run. Maybe she's had that experience. So it's more
Mm.
like, feeling that the guy is really interested, but then the emotions get so overwhelming that they actually run. They're not running because they're interested in something else. It's too much to handle.
Yeah,
Emotions.
right. And I guess this is a tough one for me because I haven't really heard men speaking to this that
Yeah.
much. Um, but I can try to tie in some of my own personal
Yeah.
experience and intuition about what she's speaking to. Um, yeah, I my sense about this is, sex does open up a lot. It opens up a lot of intimacy, which can be, in and of itself, can be scary, especially if there's like a real sense of connection there.
Mhm.
Um, and with that comes a vulnerability, and with vulnerability comes a sense of threat. Like, um, wow, if I really invest myself in this relationship or really open up or go deeper here, there's the threat of what if she leaves me? What if it doesn't last? What if, I mean, even on a sexual level, like what if I can't keep satisfying her, right?
Mm.
Um, so, I think men, especially around sex, have a lot of performance anxieties. I think we've been, uh, at least modern, current generation of men have been more conditioned around like, I want to please my woman. I want to make sure that she's satisfied. Like, and so, I think there can be some insecurity around um, maybe not being able to adequately maintain that level of energy and intimacy and you know bringing her pleasure. So maybe that kind of pressure could be a reason a man would bail. But I think also the the piece around just the when you're that open with somebody, if you have this really opening experience, it's going to bring stuff up. You know, it's going to bring up all your relational wounds, and um, especially if you haven't done the work to understand that, if you don't have a space to unpack that and explore what that's about, or if you don't yet feel safe in the relationship because it's new to bring that stuff, then I imagine that could drive a man to run away. Yeah.
What are the men generally experiencing right now? Like the men you work with, what are the loudest things, or what's happening right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think I see a lot of men coming to me really on this edge of like, I don't want to I don't want to keep doing things the way that I've been doing them. Like I'm tired of investing myself and my energy into these things that don't really feel nourishing or fulfilling. Like I'm really hungry to go after something that's more meaningful. And so right now, at least my clients, a lot of the work is around their purpose. Um, and I really, you know, I believe, I mean, this kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier with this Prince energy. Like the, the, I think men also are driven for connection and relationship, but without a grounded sense of what they're here to do.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there's often like it's hard to put words to the quality that they bring to a relationship, but it's I mean, I guess it's like a lack of direction. You know, it's like
Mm-hmm.
they're if they don't know their direction prior to coming into the relationship, and then all of a sudden, like I said, they have this thing that's needing their attention and energy. Um, it's gonna be difficult to kind of extract from the because there's goodness that comes from the energy, and it feels good, and it might feel nourishing in a way, but I don't believe like a man's primary sense of nourishment should should come from his intimate relationship,
And vice
personally.
versa.
Yeah,
And
and
also
maybe
for the
that's true
woman,
for women.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, it can be a really important piece of a man's life, and it can be an incredible source of nourishment, but it's more like the way I see it, and the way that I feel like I am in my relationship is the relationship nourishes my purpose. You know, it's sort of
Yeah.
food for the work that I'm doing in the world.
Mm. And so, what are generally things men are fed up of investing in? Like you were saying, they're looking for purpose. So, what are they like trying to stop doing
Yeah.
more of, or investing less in, or?
Well, I think it's the kind of status quo existence, like the just maintaining their lives financially, probably, you know, working for somebody that they're not inspired to work for, um, doing something that's not aligned with their values. I mean, I think that's a huge part, right? Because for most people, they have to work quite a bit to sustain themselves financially, and so that's going to take most of your time. And so, if it's something that's just it's um, dumping all your life force into something that doesn't really give back to you, because I don't think just getting money from something, bringing it back to nourishment, I don't think that's real nourishment. You know, that's just sustenance.
Yeah,
And
but so are they coming like from a point of like lowest point in their life, or they're just like fed up? It's like, there's just like a percentage wise. Just curious.
I wouldn't, I mean,
Like
I
is
wouldn't say,
50% people who have like just had really bad, like, I don't know, some dramatic events happening, or is it mostly like just fed up with my job?
yeah, it's more that. It's not, I mean,
Okay,
I don't usually get guys that are completely at rock bottom. They're
cool.
more in some kind of transition in their life, and they're like, they're getting by, but they're kind of just existing. And
Mm,
some, sometimes there's, they're it's not comfortable or it's not necessarily happy. They're definitely not in their full stride. There's some pain there around it, and it's probably
hmm.
gotten painful enough that they're willing to humble themselves and ask for help.
And what's the age group
Um,
roughly?
yeah, generally 35 to 45, I tend to see.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
do you find the older they are, there's more resistance? Somebody once said, like, if we use the term matrix, the older you get, the harder it is to get out of the matrix. I'm not sure if that's the truth.
I think there is some truth in that
Right,
because, and it's really, I think it really comes down to like neurological wiring. It's like
right.
we have these patterns of behavior, and the longer we loop around in them and reinforce them in our neurology, then, the deeper those grooves are, right? And so, yeah, it is, there's probably like we all have the capacity for change at any age, but I think it's just you have to jump off a steeper road to create a new groove.
Yeah, yeah. So that's, I'm always curious, like, at which age should you just give up and continue? Like, I had this really weak moment. I was with my daughter and we were in a cafe, and there was a
Yeah.
guy, he was 60 and he had every type of typical female comment, and the other guy was maybe 30. So he hit on my daughter saying, "Oh my God, something," and my daughter was upset and she was quite rude. And the 60-year-old just kept saying, like, "Woman, you're only here to look good." I don't know, all these comments. And
Oh yeah.
I was like, I didn't even think they still existed in the world, because it's just not in my environment. And I was
Yeah.
so close, but I kept my tongue closed. But my thoughts were like, dude, even if you got 60 therapy sessions, you're of no use to this planet anymore. Go home. At a certain age, it's just, you better give up.
I mean, I think the I think people that have given up, they've given up themselves, right? So
Hmm.
certain people are just not aspiring for anything different. Like I think people that are in that place, they're not looking for a change or a transformation necessarily, right? So you have to want something, and I think maybe at a certain point, some people become jaded by life. Maybe they've had their ass kicked too many times, and they're just like, oh, and they bought into the story, you know, that life is this way, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
They've made this assumption that this is the way that life is, and this is how it will always be, right? And I mean, I don't know the story with this guy, the 6-year-old, kind of misogynist, but um, yeah, it's like I think we can't, as leaders, as men that are maybe changing the paradigm of masculinity, we can't tell people how to be, right? I don't think that's good leadership, and we can only inspire people by how we live our lives, and they need to take action if they feel inspired. And that's why I don't recommend, you know, women saying, "Oh yeah, you should go do that program with that guy," right?
Hmm.
Like it needs to be self-motivated.
Uh, I mean, what are the dangers in when women get so fed up at a certain stage that they have to do that? Or let's say not, they don't have to do anything, but it comes to that stage. What would you recommend? Like, what would be your advice when that stage is reached? Like the man isn't, she's fed up, and those things, those steps. I mean, she's aware she shouldn't, but that's the last kind of thing she
Hmm.
has. And I know we talked about last time, you're like, the best thing she can do is stay in her purpose, like just keep doing her thing.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I think the only other thing that she can do in that situation is be willing to walk away, and not use that as a threat or a manipulation, but really have a literal term, like I, to be a stand for her needs in the relationship, and to choose that versus trying to force a man to be something different than he is.
Right, right. So it's what you're saying, it's on the strength of the woman to be able to walk away. And then there's sometimes this phase where she does do that and then he steps up. And in my experience, it's never worked because he stepped up
Coming
on
from that place, yeah.
coming from that space, because once she's back thinking he has stepped up, it will go back. So I've never seen it work ever. So
Yeah, and it probably wouldn't from that place because again, he's not really being self-motivated.
right,
He's motivated by, some a fear of losing something, you know.
right,
And some, I'm not saying like that's never a factor, sometimes like a little bit of that can be a spark, right? But he needs to want it himself. And this is something I coach men a lot on because I've, like I had a client that I just finished up with, that I worked with for about 6 months. And yeah, he had a relationship that was falling apart and his partner didn't trust him. And he, it was that kind of situation where she was like, she didn't want to have sex with him anymore. She's just like, I'm done. I don't trust you. You've crossed the line too many times. And, he did come to me. And I think initially it was from this, how can I save my marriage place? And I had to kind of keep reinforcing for him, like, listen, you need to, like, your commitment needs to be beyond this
right.
relationship. You need to commit to something deeper because she's never going to trust you if you're in it to win it. And what I mean by that is like if you're in it just
Yeah,
to like win her back.
yes.
Yeah.
So do you feel like that happens a lot? Like the men want to win. I mean, if something's falling apart, like the men take a big shoulder of that on their shoulder. It's like the whole of society is like, if it's a marriage is falling apart, it comes on the men's shoulders. Like uh, genetically, I just feel like they feel, oh, I have to save this. Whereas it's both sides. I mean, maybe the woman has allowed the boundaries to be crossed too long and she has her own issues. And I'm not
Yeah.
taking sides. But I've seen that a lot of the times. It's like the shame that hits the men is much stronger than the women.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I mean, I think a part of that is because men are more conditioned around shame. That's sort
Yeah,
of, it's like a motivating factor, it's a driving force. And and so that's probably where it hits men more. I think women probably have a different emotional response. Um, and and it's good because a lot of men have shame that they need to deal with, right? I'm not saying shame should be a motivator, but if there is unresolved shame in a man's psyche, he needs to learn how to be with that because that's often what's unconsciously driving a lot of his behaviors.
right. So do you feel like men have more in their psyche too, or they struggle more? I think women also have it, but they have a harder time around it.
Harder time around the like a
Uh,
relationship
pro-
ending or
no, no, just processing shame, like shame in the psyche. even start to
Um,
talk about it? Or
yeah, it's a hard one because uh, I think we talked about on our last call, like men have a natural biological competitive drive,
mm,
so a lot of our wiring, culturally and biologically is around winning, is around success. It's like how we prove our value, it's how we prove our worth. And and when we don't do that, like what's the natural shame? The natural response is shame, right? Like when
mm.
we don't measure up in some kind of way. Um, and but what we've got to do is um, get clear on where the shames that we've carried since childhood have been running in the background unconsciously, and um, you know helping, like, I guess, forcing us to lead a life that's not really ours, right? And so we need to return to those places and feel the feelings that are connected to the shame, which is often grief. And and when we, I mean, this is why emotional intelligence work is so important for men, because when we learn how to feel and integrate those feelings, it's only once we do that that we get to a place of clarity underneath. It's like we got to go through them to arrive at a place where, oh yeah, like here's the epiphany, here's what I'm supposed to do next, this is what my life is about.
So you mean like going through the shame? These emotions are paralyzing then. So if we don't go through them, we're just going to be like stuck in them.
Yeah, we might not, even be aware that we're in shame. Um,
Mm,
but it's it's like if the shame exists and we're not conscious to it, it's going to have a power over us, so to speak. It's sort of like steering the ship,
right.
because we're
Can you,
we're
yeah,
we're not in relationship to it.
right.
It's sort of disowned in us. And so learning to get into relationship with it and see what's there, see what's hidden within it or beside it, because there's information there. So that's what we need, to be willing to feel the feeling so we can extract the information.
If so, when I hear you say that, so if your shame is running your ship and you're not in a relationship, how can you, and you've kind of found a way to keep the opinions of others out, how can you navigate that? How would you have it wake up unless the ship crashes?
Yeah, well, I mean, usually the ship needs to crash. That's part of it.
Because I've seen that a lot of the times, like the men, they go single for a while, and or they don't stay in a committed relationship, and you can see like shame is running the ship, but that it's almost like they're oblivious to it.
Yeah, so how can you share sort of an example of how you see that playing out?
Yeah. So, okay, I'll give you one example. There was a very nice gentleman who had uh, arrived. First time I met him, very, very like success oriented, had all the intellect, everything. And maybe he was like becoming too grandiose, and but not in a relationship. So the thing is, he started having very interesting experiences like accidents, but he started like making them as the best thing that could have happened. Like, oh my God, look, I had this, isn't this cool? Actually, those events became cool. And his business was going down. You could see the quality of work was not so good. And I felt like I think he's just so ashamed of where he is right now, because he was quite public and he's actually making the events that are happening as if they're cool. And
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's a good example. So I think what a lot of men will do is they'll posture over the shame. They
right.
don't want to acknowledge that it's there, and so they create this exterior shell and it could look very successful on the
Yeah.
outside,
Right.
like internally they feel like shit, they feel inadequate, they feel unworthy. And so in order to avoid acknowledging those feelings, they push themselves really hard. They, create some kind of external success to prove to the world, like, hey, I'm not how I feel inside.
Right.
Um, and yeah, so you can fake, men can fake pretty good for a little while. It doesn't, and maybe men can do that their entire lives. I'm not saying um, the ship will always crash. I don't know how it happens, because I'm not
Yeah,
living
that's what
my
I'm
life of
always
every day.
curious.
Yeah,
As I'm the
yeah.
observer of this, I'm like, does it crash at some point? Like it's getting very loud, or um,
Well, it could crash in different ways. It could crash in terms of their health at some point. If you repress stuff for long enough, it'll turn into, like, heart disease or cancer or you
right?
know prostate issues or whatever, right?
Yes,
Erectile dysfunction, all kinds of stuff. So
right.
it will start to probably show itself through the body at some point.
Okay, so even if you've got your outside 3D world completely shiny and beautiful, it's going to show up if you haven't, um, yeah, processed it. That makes sense. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm always curious about that. So I have a question. This is then going back a little bit to our, and then I think, yeah, this is going back a little bit to the woman being the oracle, which I'm not sure if
Mhm.
it's too much from the Matrix, but it's quite a bold statement from a guy I think he's coaching men and women. The only way for a man to become truly enlightened is by staying in his power with an awakened woman who tests him from moment to moment. Otherwise, his enlightenment will be based on an illusion. Only the oracle of the awakened feminine is able to mirror whether a man has truly reached the highest level of consciousness or not. He cannot claim it for himself, period.
Hmm.
It was quite
Yeah.
bold. I was like, that's like a Matrix stuff, but what do you think?
I mean, I think there's a lot of truth in that.
Yeah,
I really believe that we can have that kind of a sacred relationship with the feminine, and really see her as a gift in every way, including, I think what men wouldn't necessarily interpret as being oracular, so to speak, is a woman's complaint or something, um, and but really she's, like, to some degree it could be her issues and her need to evolve in some way. But if we're really sort of moving into that sacred intimacy space, and we're treating our relationships as a mechanism for our conscious evolution, then absolutely everything that a woman brings is reflecting something in you, right? She's and you know I don't necessarily know, like, I imagine a woman's development, her capacity to cleanly bring that kind of energy, that kind of transmission, to a man can can also be developed, in such a way that, like, it's more, it enlightening. So, because I think it, you know, these kinds of teachings, and this isn't a new concept. This is like kind of David Data's work, and um, they can be taken to an extreme and
hmm,
allow men to kind of tolerate abuse to some degree.
yeah, yeah,
And I've seen that. It's like this kind of idea of, like, infinitely holding space for whatever Kali
yes,
intensity she wants to unleash on him.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, and a lot of times that's just like some kind of projection of her father wounds or, childhood wounds in some way. So,
Mm-hmm.
and yes, maybe if a man is super highly evolved and he really wants to take that as like, this is my test, and I'm gonna breathe into this and stay open. And sometimes that's the practice, right? But sometimes the healthy response is to say, no, that's actually not my stuff. It's like, yes, I will own that I was off in this way, but
Mm.
the degree to the reactivity that she's bringing, you know, it's that's her work,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah. So that's my take on it. I don't really think a healthy man should need to, shoulder all that burden of her unprocessed, unresolved stuff that's maybe being triggered by a little bit of lack of consciousness from him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That resonates completely.
Mm-hmm.
Got one last question.
Sure.
Men and their daughters.
Mm.
And when I was reading a little bit about the hero's journey, there was a book about it was the heroine's journey, which is written by a woman who says like the heroine's journey is just totally different from the hero's journey. So, and it's quite intense. And when I read it, I was like, it makes some sense. And she says also a man who's not present in the life of his daughter can ultimately ruin the gifts she has for the world. So it's very important for a woman or a daughter, a girl, to have a healthy male environment. My question is more men who are not available for their daughters as much as, we kind of condition the men should go and work, the woman will take care of the children, blah, blah. I'm starting to question that model as like, it's very important for a man to be very available with his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
how is it for you
Yeah.
there?
So, I have a 15-year-old
Right.
daughter, and um, I've always made it a huge priority to be present in her life and to be connected with her and to make myself available. And um, and that just came from what my heart wanted.
Right.
Um, but I think there's a lot of research around this that shows that kids that grow up in like a single parent, single mother household, I think it's different impact for sons and daughters, but daughters are more likely to get into promiscuity at an early age, drug
Mm.
addiction, to kind of struggle to integrate into the world, to develop that kind of executive function. I think there's a lot of studies that also show, the way that fathers play with their children, which is
Mm-hmm.
tends to be more like rough housing, which in a way it teaches kids about boundaries and
Mm-hmm.
empathy. So just that physical contact and um, knowing like intuitively, instinctively, what happens is it trains kids to have a sense of um, the edge. It's like how far we can push somebody. And this, boys, like my daughter loved to wrestle and play, and as much as she loved to cuddle. And I think I don't really know the studies about this, but I think having physical connection and physical affection, intimacy with a father to a daughter, probably, I think this is probably what ties into, when that need is not met, um, that sort of absent father thing is
Mm-hmm.
what has a girl, seek sex as a substitute for that, like this kind of longing for that masculine energy in a way. Um, so my screen just shifted here. Yeah. So I think men need to be there for their kids,
Right.
100%.
And so, like, are you having daily like you're away now? Do you call her every day, or can she come to you with her problems? There's a space you create for that.
Yeah, I mean, she's at this age where she's kind of differentiating. So,
Okay.
and she's a, I think, I mean, this is just like a personal thing. But I think she's very close with her mother, and to some degree, I think that's healthy. It might be too close in a way, and but I think as a teenager, that's her like that's the role model that she's leaning into. She's like
Hmm.
learning what it is to be a woman in the world, and I trust her process around that, and my role is to be consistent and let her know that I'm here for her whenever she would like to connect, and um, but I don't try to put any pressure on her to
Mm.
you know fulfill any kind of emotional need for me.
But you would be available to fulfill all her emotional needs if needed.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily put it in those terms, but I'm available
Right.
to support her, and also to where it feels useful to challenge her. I think I shared on the last call, like I think one of the gifts of like the more masculine version of love is to bring challenge, to offer sort of healthy discourse, and ability to provide perspective around things, not always
Nice.
being agreeable. Yeah,
Very nice.
yeah,
So I think we have an hour.
great. Yeah,
Yes. Thank you so much. How long are you staying there?
I'm gonna be here a couple more weeks. Yeah.
And you're there alone?
No, my partner's here with me, so
Okay.
she's yeah. Hmm.
And you guys are going to buy a place, or what are your plans?
Yeah, I'm looking. I don't know if it's going to happen here. I think we're going to go to Colorado next and check out
Mm.
Colorado. I'm looking for some land, and I have a certain vision of what that looks like.
Right.
What sort of elements I want there. Um, and I don't know. I'm not attached to the where yet. It's more about
Yeah.
having the right conditions, and part of that consideration is around climate change and how the earth and the weather is going to be changing over the
Right.
next 10 years or so.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is like for this like maybe tribal living that you talked about.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would love for it to build into that,
Yes.
and I don't have the resources myself to buy a huge piece of property that I could have a whole community there. Um,
Hmm.
but if and it's tricky in the US with building codes and regulations
Mm.
around you know how many dwellings you can have in the zoning and stuff like that. So I'm not even sure how easily I could pull that off here. Um,
Got it.
but it feels important for me to start investing in like a solid base for myself and my family,
Hmm.
just as a place to be. And I don't
Yeah.
know if it could evolve into something that can support other people, but I'm not 100% about that yet. Yeah.
There's a book I read by a guy called, I mean, he's a mystic. He's one of these channeled materials, which I just look at it from a distance, but I was already feeling this climate change and places to live. And he's called like Sal Rochelle. And he's pretty accurate, but I don't like it when they're so accurate, but like prophesizing that he actually states all the places where there will be flooding, where you shouldn't be living, like coming in
Oh,
the
wow.
next till 2030. He's like, the last wave of awakening will be 2030. And he had some dates that were also interesting, which I had experienced. And he's talking about away from the main cities and away from ocean. Like, don't have a place at the ocean.
Yeah, I mean that all seems pretty obvious, but I'd be curious to check that out because
Yeah,
yeah,
I would tell
that's
you.
something I've been looking into. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, you can take the science route, which I don't think that's that predictable, right? Or you can take
Yeah.
the psychic
I mean, I
route.
take a
Yeah.
mixture of everything, but he was
Yeah.
so accurate. And he
Yeah.
wrote this book, I think, in before 2000. Oh no, even in the
Yeah.
90s. I will just call the name of the book. I have it here, and it was like to the point. Which places? The name of the book. I have it here, and it was like to the point. Which places will get flooding? Which place will this and that? I was just interested. Not that I was like, oh, that's interesting. What's it called?
Yeah. Yeah. I'd be curious to hear about
Yeah.
that. Yeah. And you know, I'm also considering, you know, not necessarily doing it in the US,
Yeah.
but yeah, we'll see.
Come to Bali.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I am curious about Bali. I've
Yeah.
never been there.
Okay, this guy, I'll send you the name of the book, but he's called Sal Rochelle, Salrachele, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. I think the one I got was the Earth Awakening, 2012
Earth
to
Awakening.
2030. It's called Earth
Okay.
Awakens. Earth Awakens.
Yeah.
Salrachele. I mean, I
Yeah.
also have soul integration, but yeah.
Is he still teaching and predicting? I'm just kind of curious,
Yeah,
you know, if he wrote
yeah. I
that,
think he's
you know,
pretty
20
much
years ago.
still there. He's also offering courses like in groups. He used to go around, I think, some Polish or Eastern European. I had some connection with him last year, but this year on this island, I'm just like, if I just hold, the energies do so much here that it's very powerful. You don't even need to read a book anymore or do anything. It's pretty powerful. And yeah, I think he's still alive. He's still doing his stuff. He's still doing teachings. He's still even doing privates.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd just be curious if he's got any different perspective on it after this many years, or if he's still kind of holding his predictions. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to his website. Yeah, exactly. That's what we have to look again because so many things are changing.
Right.
And there's a guy called Jason Estes, Estes, who I listen to on Facebook. I think he's the most updated in terms of predictions and energies I've met. He's got loads of technology. He's based in Texas.
Okay. Yeah.
And
So he's
he's
more
just like,
scientific about it. Yeah.
and spiritual, because he just keeps talking about the 5D. He's talking about all of us having to be our own leaders. And he's just got all the dates to the T. He's like, we'll have the next clarity on the 18th and the 21st, the new movie's already started, you know, I was just like, wow, he's putting words on my experiences, but he's really, really good. But in terms of illusion, he's bringing the whole matrix spiritual world into it, but he's very down to earth. He's creating a lot of technology to support this future thing.
Yeah.
Very
That
interesting
sounds
to follow
interesting.
him. Yeah. I'll send you his name
Yeah.
also.
Yeah. Yeah. That'd be great. Yeah. Well, it's good to hang out with you again.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you. And maybe see you in Bali.
Thank you for the.
Please come.
Yeah. Yeah. I, I don't know. I mean, one thing, you know, is just where I personally is, you know, not wanting to get vaccinated right now. And we were actually considering it, to have a visit there sometime, but I think you have to be vaccinated to get into Bali right now.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
just wait. Yeah. Yeah. So you do need a vaccine to come here. They just opened the borders 2 days ago for visas, and you have to do 8 days quarantine. But I think by the end of this year, this would all sort of like go in
Yeah,
an
maybe
interesting
that'll
direction.
change if it starts to calm down again. They might shift that.
Yeah. Okay, I'll keep you in touch.
Okay, sounds
And I'll
good.
send
Thanks
you
so
this
much.